speaking about a movie that there's probably not going to be many comments for.
Actually, to be honest, I actually have quite a few comments. Probably the most comments about this movie.
Oh, that's interesting.
Out of all the ones that are on the list for today.
That should make for a fun conversation.
At least maybe from one side.
Oh.
So next up we're going to be talking about Sorority House Massacre, which is about a mental patient who escapes from his facility to chase down and kill some girls at a sorority house, one of which who shares some sort of telepathic link with the killer. Now, this is a really simple movie, but on the positive note, I think it knows exactly what it's going for and what it is, and it even picks a very suitable runtime of, 78 minutes?
It's very digestible, very short.
Yeah, we talked, I think it was last week, about a movie called Cherokee Creek, which went way too long, almost 2 hours, pretty much 2 hours, and that was a huge problem with the movie. Whereas I think on the flip side, this movie, it knew exactly how long it should run for based on the amount of content that they had. It doesn't really have any standout characters outside of maybe the killer. It does have some very... The music in the movie is quite decent, very 80s-ish, cheap, but effective, I guess, for this type of movie. It doesn't have... there's some okay kills in the movie, nothing too elaborate. They're all just pretty much stabbings, but I think the most brutal one is right at the very end.
I pretty much like any 80s slasher I see, even the ones I don't necessarily love, such as Sweet 16. I still generally enjoy the experience, and this was no different. I really like Sorority House Massacre. In fact, I probably liked it more than both the House and Sorority Row from 83 or the Slumber Party Massacre from 82. And there's a few reasons. One, I thought the addition of the dream sequences gave a very, very unique feel. It almost felt like sort of a Nightmare on Elm Street type scenario.
That's something I was also going to say.
I deeply apologize for stealing your point. But there are actually some, it's cheap, but there's some mildly creepy scenes in the dreams. And I really thought they did a good job with that, despite the obvious low-budget nature. There's no standout characters, but there's a pretty fun sequence of 3 of the characters changing clothes for 3 minutes. So
that sax music scene. I was almost expecting George Michael's Careless Whisper to start. Yeah.
That might have ruined the vibe in my opinion. I actually like that scene, not just because of the nudity, to be clear, but I like the way they shot that. Just the chains, the close chains in mid-air as they're throwing it up. I don't know, it just, I sort of enjoyed the feel they went for. It's almost like a 80s music video type thing. And I enjoyed that. I actually do disagree on one point. I actually thought the killer was probably the weakest link in the movie. I didn't hate the guy, I just didn't see it. But, I think most of the kills are okay. There's a TP1, I think, that's particularly decent.
And some decent titties in there.
Yeah, this movie, as you would hope from an 80s slasher, it has some decent nudity. It's not really over the top. But if you go in hoping for a little something, you might get a little something. So, anyhow, so the movie, I actually really enjoyed it, which might not be too surprising given my deep love of the slasher subgenre. I found very little in this movie to dislike, though.
And I also picked up that this was directed by Carol Frank, who I believe at the time was a film student when she made this movie, and I think it was her first movie, so I thought she did a very good job there. It actually came across like... I know it's a low-budget movie, but I didn't really pick up on any amateurish filmmaking here in comparison to any other low-budget slasher movie that's been put out there.
And in fact, because of the runtime, there's a lot of slashers from the 80s, and some of them aren't that great. But this one in my opinion, is just a lot more digestible, and because of that, it can sort of move ahead of, I wasn't a big fan of a movie called The Mutilator, and The Mutilator is, decently well liked by a lot of 80s fans, but I didn't love the movie. But I thought this movie, because of its nature, is even better than some of the, I guess, B-slasher movies that a lot of people like. That's not to say people don't like Sorority House Massacre, but when it comes to 80s slashers, I generally don't hear this one spoken about that much.
It's also got some, I really enjoy some of the shots in the dark with the blue lighting, and I think they all look really, really good.
This movie was a lot more artistic than you might expect.
You may not pick up on some of that if you're watching maybe a really old, poor quality version, but I mean, I was watching this on Blu-ray. I'm not sure how you watched it, but it definitely accentuated that a lot more on the Blu-ray.
Out of interest, what's your favorite part of one of the dream sequences?
Nothing really in the dream sequences stood out to me all that much. Was the scene where she found all the dolls at the table a part of the dream? I can't recall now. Yeah. I mean, that's memorable a little bit to me, but not necessarily any of it stood out too much. But, I mean, the parts that kind of stood out were just her visions of this guy, like holding a knife, just looking at her for a quick second or two.
I just want to sort of reiterate, I think this movie stands out, one, because of, actually, like you said, it's not only is it this woman's first movie, it might be one of her few movies. I don't know if she did much more after this, which is unfortunate because, this might come across to many people as sort of a generic slasher. In many ways it is. The addition of the telepathic link, which is sort of explained in the movie, actually, I thought that was interesting, along with the dream sequences, which, like I said, it's probably either, mild reference to Nightmare on Elm Street. I mean, the dream sequences weren't necessarily amazing, but I really thought there was some decent imagery in some of them. There's one where she finds a picture of 3 little girls, and they all start bleeding out of different stab wounds in them, which I thought was pretty cool. And another thing I enjoyed was that the killer, and we never focus that much on the killer, but we do get to see sort of inside of his mind, and when he's killing some of these sorority girls, he sees them as his sisters, little girls, and he calls them, of course, by those names too, which really shows us type of insanity we're talking about, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, so just as I've been saying, it's a very simple movie. It knows exactly what it's going for. It doesn't try to do anything too elaborate, and though there is some underlying artsy type extra vision to it that people may not actually catch. And this is a movie, I think, that was just made due to the success of Slumber Party Massacre, because I think Roger Corman had his hands in both movies, and I believe he said they just made this movie, they just wanted to make something similar, throw on a similar title, and, put it out there. And apparently it made enough money to warrant a few sequels as well. But, I think the movie overachieves in a way based on how paper thin the plot is, and just how it's kind of a clone of it clones a lot of the usual slasher cliches, but it throws its own unique vibe on. So I have no problem saying this is an above average slasher movie for me, and I give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, so this is actually, out of other horror movies discussed tonight, this is actually my favorite movie, because I'm a sucker for any slasher movie, even if it's a generic slasher movie. I don't really care. I pretty much enjoy all of them, so especially from the 80s, which is probably undeniably one of the best decades for slashers. This one I give an easy 8 out of 10. I've seen this one before and I had fun with it. Saw it again, I still had fun with it. I was actually expecting my rating to go down, but I still had quite a bit of fun with this one, and if you're a fan of slashers and you haven't seen this one, if you've just sort of looked over it because, it might not seem like it would amount to much, I might recommend giving it a second look, because you might find you enjoy it just a bit more than you think you might.
Yeah, and there's some decent titties in the movie.
Yeah, it's true. I actually read something that the main actress, whose name off the top of my head I don't remember, she actually was also supposed to have some nude scenes, but she didn't read the script before accepting it, but time is cut too short, so she was starting to walk out unless she did have to do them, so they said, fine, you don't need to do them, which is, from what I read, one of the reasons why that one, with just, trying on each other's clothes type scene, where she's just sitting in the back not doing anything, and the three other girls are just having the time of their lives. So I thought that was a little interesting tidbit, which I just got from IMDb, so